11:42 p.m. A quiet Thursday night in Des Moines. I was standing in the same kitchen I always stood in. The soft yellow light cast a warm glow across the stone countertop. In my hand was a cup of coffee, cold by now. Like it always was. Just a habit, I guess, from someone whose mind never stops spinning like an accounting spreadsheet on loop. My phone buzzed. A text message. From Dana, my wife. The woman I'd lived with for 15 years. Shared a roof, a bed, and a bank account. I read it. 2 sentences. No more. I'm not coming back. I've met someone better and already moved your things to storage. Attached was a screenshot. A bank transfer confirmation. $118, withdrawn entirely from our joint account. Sent to her personal one. No goodbye. No call. No, where are you? No, what are you feeling? Just a notification. Like a last-minute flight cancellation alert. I didn't smash the cup. Didn't scream. I just set the phone down. And finished the last sip of coffee. Even though it was so cold it barely tasted like anything. 15 years of marriage, reduced to one text message and a single tap on a screen. I wouldn't say I was surprised. Honestly, the signs had been there for a while. The girls' trips that got extended by a day or two. The new clothes she never wore in front of me. The phone calls that ended abruptly the second I walked into the room. The nights she spent scrolling through her phone instead of talking to me. I saw all of it. I'm a forensic accountant. Spotting discrepancies and signs of fraud is literally my job. I have an eye for mismatched numbers and patterns that don't align. And Dana had become a detail that no longer aligned with my life. But I said nothing. Maybe that was my first mistake. Or maybe the first mistake was falling in love with someone who thought my work was just spreadsheets and boring numbers. Someone who never understood that I have limits too, and I have plans. I opened my laptop, the one Dana never knew existed. An email was waiting, from the financial security alert system I'd set up years ago. 3 notifications. Someone had just tried to change the passwords on my investment accounts. The ones Dana didn't even know existed. She was careful, I'll give her that. She didn't just withdraw the money, she tried to take control of everything that was left. But there was one thing she didn't expect. I had been preparing for this moment. For a very long time. I texted back just 2 words. Good luck. Then I called Jason, my younger brother. The only person who knew about the contingency plan I drafted 5 years ago. Remember that plan we talked about back then? I asked when he picked up. Yeah, he said, cautiously. It's time. I hung up, stood up, and walked into the living room. There it was. Still hanging on the wall. The only wedding photo left in the house. Me and Dana, smiling, holding hands, standing in front of a lavender bush. I stared at it for a long time. Not because I still loved her, but because I was wondering, why hadn't I taken that photo down sooner? I met Dana at a college reunion back at the University of Iowa. I was 38 then, just out of a short-lived marriage, a wound not deep, but enough to make me retreat into myself. I didn't go to that party to meet anyone. I went out of courtesy, out of a sense of obligation, maybe even in hopes of finding some part of myself I'd lost in all those years grinding through work. And then she walked in. Dana, 34, long hair, radiant smile, eyes full of energy. She didn't ask me what I did for a living. Didn't care what car I drove. We just talked about little things, weather, Iowa roast coffee, and movies we both liked but forgot the names of. And weirdly enough, I felt peace. We dated for a year. And during all that time, Dana made no effort to understand my work. You don't have to explain the details, she'd say when I tried to describe a recent audit case. As long as you're good enough to keep us living comfortably. At the time, I thought that was her way of trusting me. Later, I realized, she just didn't care. We got married. I took Dana to Europe for our honeymoon. She wanted to open a yoga studio. I said yes. Every cent of the funding came from my savings. Over 10 years of work poured into that place. When she wanted a new Lexus, I agreed. When she wanted a bigger house in a more upscale neighborhood, I signed. I still remember. One time, my dad was helping me fix the back porch roof. He paused, looked at me for a long while, and said, "Son, Your wife spends a lot of your money. Just make sure she really understands what you've done to earn every single dollar of it." I gave a half smile. I told him, "You're overthinking it. Everyone has their own way of living." But that sentence stayed in my head. In the 6th year of our marriage, I started moving assets out of joint control. Not because I was suspicious, but because my job taught me one thing. The biggest risks usually come from the people closest to you. I set up 2 LLCs, created personal protection trusts, invested in crypto, opened foreign currency accounts under the role of a financial advisor for international clients. All legal, all transparent, just not within Dana's line of sight. Dana only knew about our joint checking account. And for her, that was enough. She never asked about the rest. Not because she trusted me, but because she never really cared about what I called long-term value. Then she started changing. Little by little, her Instagram started gaining thousands of followers. The yoga studio became a wellness center. Dana began going to conferences, workshops, then retreats, at resorts I'd never even heard of. Every time I asked, she'd shrug. "You wouldn't like it. Just a bunch of talks about meditation, detoxing, and drinking celery juice." I nodded. Like always, I never wanted to control her. I never had. But when you live in a house where every door is slowly closing on you, you start hearing things through the walls. Things you can't name, but know aren't right. The tipping point came last Christmas. Dana forgot my birthday. She came home late. No cake, no wishes. Only when I mentioned it the next morning did she look surprised. Then hurriedly handed me an expensive watch. I've been swamped opening a new studio branch. But here, I meant to give it to you yesterday. I smiled, took the watch, and that night, I signed the final document in the financial contingency plan I had quietly drafted over the past 2 years. Not because I stopped loving her, but because I finally accepted that love isn't enough to hold on to someone who had let go a long time ago. So that night, when I stood in the kitchen and read the message, "I've met someone better," I didn't fall apart. I just understood. Everything was moving exactly in the direction she had chosen. And me, I was ready. The next morning, I made coffee like I always did. My hands repeated the familiar motions. Twist the lid, scoop the grounds, start the machine. The only thing different was the feeling. Not pain, not anger, just clarity. A kind of cold stillness, but clean. I sat at the table, opened my laptop, logged into the financial system I had built, for my business and for myself. With a few keystrokes, I activated the contingency protocol, the emergency plan Jason and I wrote 5 years ago. Then locked away in a hidden folder. Back then, I didn't think I'd ever use it. But as someone trained to investigate financial fraud, I know one thing. Every risk should be defined before it happens. First command: freeze all joint accounts and linked credit cards. Second command: flag the $118 transfer as suspicious. Attach documentation proving the unauthorized withdrawal. With the banking relationships I'd built over 2 decades, accelerating the process wasn't hard. And this time, I didn't hesitate. I emailed my attorney, attached all the evidence, transaction history, screenshots of Dana's text, logs of unauthorized access attempts to my investment accounts, and a copy of our prenup confirming separate property ownership. At the bottom of the email, I wrote, "File for divorce, urgent, reason, financial fraud and unauthorized fund withdrawal." Then I called my mom. Her voice was the same as always, warm, calm, and somehow able to sense something was wrong from the first hello. "I'm okay, Mom," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "It's just, Dana's gone. She took the money, moved my stuff out." A silence. Then she simply said, "I'm so sorry, but I'm not surprised. What are you going to do?" I took a deep breath. The coffee was still warm in my hand. "I'm going to do what I should have done a long time ago. Protect myself." Less than an hour later, my phone lit up. Dana's name on the screen. I didn't answer. Second call. Third. 10 calls within half an hour. "Roy mo tin nyan. An lam kai ki githa. Tien bien mat. Tat ka the du kong dung duok. An bai dine. Toi kong tra loy. Kong vi toi lan lung. Ma vi toi da hu. Noi ta kai goi banla. Dean. Ki ban nung de ho loi dung ban. Toi lai zi den dia kai ko chua du noi dana dogway ma tri kap trong tin nyan chia te. Gun kua kim lo I mo ra. Ben trong la hai thung zay lon. Nyan dan ten toi. Toi mo ra. Vi bo quan ao. Chiak laptop ku. Kong en jia din. Kong gun sak now toi tung doc. Kong dong ho deo te kua cha toi. Kong mon du now ko jia tri tin cam. Just enough so she wouldn't be called someone who walked away completely. Something inside me cracked at that moment. But it didn't bleed. It just froze. Silently. Sharp as glass. This isn't about money anymore. I whispered to myself. This is a life erased, as if it never existed at all. I drove straight to a small cafe, opened my laptop, and logged into the financial investigation database accessible only to licensed professionals. I typed in the name, Trey Harmon, the name Dana had once casually mentioned. Tagged in photos, smiled and tilted her head every time she said, "Just a friend from the yoga community." Within minutes, the details appeared. 3 business credit cards maxed out. 1 commercial lease in delinquency. A loan backed by equipment from a newly opened gym. And finally, one line made me pause. Co-signer for the $175 equipment loan, Dana Bowman. Status. Approved. Legal relationship. Spouse. She had used our marital assets to rescue a business drowning in debt. No disclosure. No permission. No conversation. I shut the laptop. There was nothing left to think about. Nothing left to wait for. Not because I was hurt. But because I was awake now. Monday. I got to the office early. Made a cup of coffee. Skimmed through emails. Sent a client report. I kept my routine intact, the way I always had. Clear. Steady. Like nothing had happened. At 9:47 a.m., my assistant Valerie knocked on my office door. "Leonard?" Dana called. 3 times. She says it's urgent. I didn't look up from the screen. Just gave a single instruction. If she calls again, tell her to contact my attorney. But less than 2 hours later, she showed up. Valerie buzzed in. "She's at the front desk. Says she won't leave until she sees you." I exhaled deeply. Not because I wasn't ready, but because I had been waiting for this moment longer than she realized. I walked into the lobby. Dana stood there. Same old posture. Expensive sunglasses pushed to her head. Yoga outfit flawless without a single crease. That familiar smile that once made me believe I was the lucky one. She saw me and smiled instantly. "Leonard, thank God. I need to talk to you. There's been some kind of misunderstanding with the bank." Her voice was loud enough for everyone around to hear. A smile, an explanation, as if this were just a minor hiccup between lovers. I stepped closer and spoke quietly, but clearly. "There's no misunderstanding. You withdrew money from our joint account without consent. The bank calls that fraud." Dana's smile froze for half a second. She lowered her voice, stepped closer. "Leonard, please, I know I handled it wrong. But you can't freeze everything. I've put down a deposit on the new house. I have plans. I promised Trey." I cut her off. No anger, no raised voice. "I know, Trey. The loans. The co-signed agreement. The part where you used my name to borrow $175 without asking." She went pale. You investigated me?" I shook my head. "I protected myself. There's a difference." Dana clutched her bag tighter. Took a half step back. "I'll fight this. I deserve half." I looked her straight in the eye. "Half of what you know. But you seem to forget. What you know is just the surface." That afternoon, I received an email from her attorney. A formal request for full disclosure of assets, investment portfolios, and personal accounting records, with a threat attached. If I didn't cooperate, they would expose irregularities in financial filings, a veiled attempt at blackmail. I didn't get angry. I didn't flinch. I simply forwarded the email to my lawyer. With a single line, "Proceed as planned." That evening, my phone lit up with messages. Mutual friends, old acquaintances, questions loaded with judgment. "Leonard, why are you being like this? Dana says you're controlling, that you won't let her access shared money. Don't you think you're being a bit extreme? No one asked where she had really gone during the retreat. No one asked about the new man. No one mentioned the missing $118. I didn't reply to anyone. I had no more interest in justifying myself. Not because I lost, but because I understood. The truth doesn't need defense. It only needs to remain intact. Instead of getting angry, I went to the old gym I used to train at. Not Dana's studio, not Trey's flashy fitness center. Just a small, humble place. Worn out machines, a slightly slippery floor, no colored lights, no self-admiring mirrors. I lifted weights until my arms trembled. Sweat soaked through my shirt. But I felt clean. Cleaner than any apology. Cleaner than all the promises that once softened my resolve. The trap was closing. But this time, it wasn't for me. 3 days after that confrontation, I sat in Jason's living room. A small space, warm yellow lights, the scent of old wood and a faint trace of burnt coffee from the kitchen. Everything felt familiar. Jason set his laptop on the table. The screen lit up with the names of 3 bank accounts, 2 LLCs, and a string of transactions starting 16 months ago. They're all tied to Trey Harmon. And the person moving the money was Dana. I nodded, not surprised. Just like an old wound being reopened, this time. To drain it clean. How much? I asked, eyes fixed on the screen. About $80. Moved from your joint account to her personal one. Then funneled into Trey's newly registered LLC. I shook my head gently. She wasn't just planning to leave. She funded that departure with what I spent a lifetime building. Jason didn't speak. He understood. Some truths don't need to be said out loud. Then he opened another tab. This next one is the critical piece. On the screen was a business loan agreement dated 4 months back. Borrower: Trey Harmon. Purpose: purchase new gym equipment. Collateral: all equipment, assets, and commercial lease rights. There were 3 signature lines. The first, Trey. The second, Dana. The third, spouse, Leonard Kessler. I froze. I had never signed anything. I had never heard of this loan. Jason looked at me, voice low. They used your marital status to secure a low-interest loan. And Dana forged your signature. I stepped out to the back porch. Cold wind hit my face, but it wasn't as biting as the feeling spreading through my chest. She didn't just drain money. She put my name on a debt for another man. She tied me into their future, as if I were just a wallet they could pledge anytime. No more doubts. No more assumptions. Just evidence, and the will to act. The next day, I brought all the documents to my lawyer's office. I want to file for an emergency protective order on the assets. I said, steady. She forged my name, used my identity to borrow, to co-sign, to expand a business that wasn't mine. My lawyer, a woman in her 50s who had handled hundreds of divorces, said calmly, "That's enough. We have everything. And this time, she won't have a way out." That afternoon, I drove to Harmon Fitness, Trey's new gym. Polished front, clean, modern logo. But I wasn't looking at the sign. I was looking at how everything there was built with money that wasn't his. Trey came out to greet me. Bright white smile, sneakers worth several $100s. He reached out to shake my hand. I didn't take it. "Leonard, great to see you," Dana said. "We need to talk. Privately." We sat in his office, glass walls, soundproofed. I placed a folder on the table. These are all the loan agreements, lease contracts, equipment purchases, credit card statements. Every one of them was signed by Dana, on my behalf, as her husband. But now we're getting divorced. Which means, you no longer have my financial backing. Trey picked up the folder and flipped through it. His face shifted from confusion to pale realization. "But this is legal, right?" Dana signed. "The bank approved. It's legal if there's consent." I never signed. And now, those loans will be called in. The collateral will be seized. He leaned back, eyes wide. Dana said, "You were rich." She said money wasn't a problem. I gave a small smile. Not bitter, just a tired smile for the naivety Dana had fed both of us. Money was never the problem. Trust was what ran out. I stood, hand on the doorknob. I paused. One more thing. When she left the house, she took a few things that weren't hers. Some old photos. My father's watch. Memories I never meant to share with anyone. Trey said nothing. Just gave a small, silent nod. The next morning, a box arrived at the hotel where I was staying. No return address. Inside were our wedding photo album, the old wristwatch, a few yellowed books. No note, no apology. But I understood. She was starting to feel the consequences. Not because I demanded it, but because, for the first time, no one was shielding her anymore. 2 days after the box arrived, I got a call from my lawyer. Her voice was calm but firm. The emergency asset freeze has been approved. The court reviewed your documents, especially the loan contract with your forged signature. From now on, any shared or jointly connected assets will be frozen. No more withdrawals, no new loans approved, and most importantly, she's no longer allowed to use your name for anything. I nodded, felt a chill run down my spine. Not out of fear, but because, for the first time in years of swallowing my pride, I finally felt protected. Not by anyone else, but by my own decision. That afternoon, Dana called. I let the phone ring until the third attempt before answering. Her voice wasn't firm like it used to be. It cracked slightly at the end of each sentence. Like every word took effort to stay standing. Leonard, things are getting bad. The bank called Trey. They said the gym's collateral might be seized. I don't understand. How could you do this to me? I kept my tone calm. I didn't do anything to you, Dana. I just stopped letting you do more to me. Silence on the line. Then she broke. I know I messed up. I shouldn't have done any of it. But we can fix this, can't we? I'm scared Trey can't handle this hit. You know me. You've always been my rock. We were a team. I closed my eyes, wondering how many times over the last 15 years I'd heard that exact phrase. We were a team, but we were never a team. We were one pushing, one holding back, one loving, one waiting, one building, one draining. And now, the one who drained had nothing left to siphon. I breathed slowly. I'm not punishing you, Dana. I'm not destroying anyone. I'm just re-establishing the boundary. The one that should have been there a long time ago. She whispered. You're not going to sue me, are you? Over the loan? I replied, steady. I'm not suing you. The bank is. Me? I'm just stepping aside, for the first time in my life. I hung up. No shaking. No regret. Just a heartbeat that felt a little slower. Like a weight had quietly fallen from my back. The next day, my lawyer called again. We've just sent formal notice to Dana and her attorney. The court will hold a hearing in 2 weeks regarding the financial misconduct. She's facing charges, forgery, misuse of marital assets, and possibly criminal charges if the bank escalates. I said nothing. Leonard? She asked. Do you want to pursue the criminal path? I looked out the window. The leaves outside had started to change color. The breeze moved the white curtain gently. In that moment, I knew I didn't need to see her fall to feel like I'd won. I don't want to put her in jail, I said slowly. I just want to stop being the one who pays the price for choices that were never mine. The lawyer nodded on the phone. Then we stick with the settlement route. She signs the divorce papers, waives any claim to joint assets, and withdraws from all loans associated with your name. In return, you sign a statement agreeing not to pursue criminal charges. I exhaled, not because I regretted anything, but because I mourned a journey that could have been beautiful. If just one person had known when to stop. Do it, I said, and, if she asks why I went soft, tell her, it's not because I still love her. It's because I'm finally calm enough not to need revenge. That night, I sat alone on the hotel balcony. A glass of bourbon, still air, no Dana, no calls from the bank, nothing. I tilted my head back and looked up at the Des Moines sky, fading under the city lights. This wasn't a movie ending. No background music, no one running up to hug me from behind. Just me, left alone. But I didn't feel lonely. What I felt was peace. The kind that only finds you at the very end, when everything else has fallen away. 2 days after the keepsake box was returned, I got a call from the lawyer. Her voice was low, but clear. The emergency freeze order has been granted. The court reviewed the documents you provided, especially the loan contracts in your name without your signature. Effective immediately. All jointly owned or linked assets are frozen. No withdrawals. No new loans. And most importantly, she can no longer use your name for anything. I nodded. Felt a chill run down my spine. Not from fear, but because for the first time, after years of backing down and staying silent, I felt protected, not by anyone else, but by my own decision. That afternoon, Dana called. I let it ring until the third time before picking up. Her voice didn't have the usual certainty. It cracked slightly at the end of each sentence. Like every word took effort to hold upright. Leonard, it's bad. The bank called Trey. They said the collateral is about to be seized. I don't understand. How could you do this to me? I kept my voice steady. I didn't do anything to you, Dana. I just stopped letting you do more to me. There was a long pause on the other end. Then her voice broke. I know I messed up. I shouldn't have done what I did. But we can still fix it. Can't we? I'm scared. Trey isn't strong enough to handle this. You know that. You used to be my rock. We were a team. I closed my eyes, wondering how many times over the last 15 years I'd heard that exact phrase. We were a team. We were never a team. We were one person pushing, one person pulling, one loving, one waiting, one giving, one taking. And now, the taker had no more to take. I breathed slowly. I'm not getting back at you, Dana. I'm not destroying anyone. I'm just setting a boundary. One that should have been there a long time ago. She whispered, "You're not gonna sue me, are you, for the loans?" I replied, my voice even. "I'm not suing you. The bank is. Me? I'm just stepping aside, for the first time in my life." I hung up. No shaking. No regret. Just felt my heart beat a little slower. Like a weight had slid off my shoulders without a sound. The next day, the lawyer called again. We just served notice to Dana and her attorney. The court will hold a hearing on financial misconduct within 2 weeks. She's facing allegations of forgery, misuse of marital assets, and possibly criminal charges if the bank escalates. I stayed silent. "Leonard?" the lawyer asked. "Do you want to go through with this?" I looked out the window. The leaves outside were starting to change color. The breeze gently swayed the sheer curtain. And in that moment, I knew I didn't need to watch her fall to feel like I'd won. "I don't want to send her to jail," I said slowly. "I just want to stop being the one who pays for decisions that weren't mine to make." The lawyer nodded over the phone. "Then we'll stick to the settlement approach. She signs the divorce papers, waives any claim to property division, and withdraws from all loans under your name. In return, you sign an agreement not to pursue criminal charges." I sighed, not because I regretted anything, but because I felt sorry for a journey that could have been more beautiful. If only someone had known when to stop. "Do it," I said, "and, if she asks why I softened, tell her, it's not because I still love her, but because I'm calm enough now not to need revenge." That evening, I sat alone on the hotel balcony. A glass of bourbon, calm wind, no Dana, no calls from the bank, nothing. I tilted my head back, looking up at the Des Moines sky, fading under the streetlights. It wasn't a movie ending. No background music, no one rushing to hug me from behind. Just me, left alone. But I didn't feel lonely. I felt peace. Something you only find in the end, when everything else has already fallen away. 3 weeks after the court ordered the asset freeze, the final mediation took place. We met in a rented conference room, quiet, frosted glass, with no one present but our lawyers, a neutral mediator, and us. Dana arrived first. I walked in after. She looked up, and for the first time, her eyes didn't have that fiery confidence. They weren't trying to seem cute either. It was just exhaustion. A kind of exhaustion that didn't come from physical weariness, but from the collapse of everything she thought was unbreakable. Her lawyer spoke first, professional, cautious, but clearly aware she was sitting in a weak position. "My client, Ms. Dana Bowman, is ready to negotiate the division of assets, with a willingness to minimize losses for both parties." My lawyer nodded. "No rush, no pushing." "Very well. We've also just received a report from the bank. And there are some new developments." She opened a file and placed a printed document on the table, gently pushing it toward the other side. I said nothing. Just watched Dana. She took the document, skimmed it, then paused, then slowly looked up, her eyes no longer hiding anything. "What's this?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. My lawyer answered. "The bank has completed its internal investigation. They've confirmed that Leonard Kessler's signature on the loan contracts is forged. And because the loans were approved based on joint assets, this constitutes a crime of misappropriating marital property. They've sent the files to the prosecutor's office for potential criminal charges." No one said anything. No need to say anything. The silence in that room was heavier than any accusation could have been. Dana turned to look at me. Not angry, not crying. Just someone who finally saw the crack they created, and knew it couldn't be patched up anymore. "Leonard, you can't do this. You can't take me to court for something I didn't mean to do," I replied, my voice steady. "I'm not doing it. The bank is." She lowered her head. I didn't feel triumphant. There was no feeling of getting back at her. Just, I knew I didn't have to keep holding on to something I should have let go of long ago. My lawyer continued. "We have a proposal. If Ms. Dana signs the divorce agreement today, waiving her right to property division, taking responsibility for all loans under her name, not asking for financial support post-divorce, then Mr. Kessler will sign an agreement not to pursue criminal charges, and will not file a civil suit for the $118 that was withdrawn." The conference room fell into silence for the second time. She didn't ask any questions. No bargaining. She just looked down, took the pen, and signed. Each stroke of the pen on paper felt like the last fragments of that marriage, flowing straight into a chapter that had closed. When she stood up, she gently touched my hand, like an old habit that still lingered. I didn't pull away, but I didn't respond either. "I didn't think you could go this far," she said, her eyes never leaving mine. "You were always the softest person in the room." I smiled, not with pain, not with bitterness, just someone who had learned a lesson they once thought they didn't need to learn. "I haven't changed, Dana. I've just stopped letting things slide." I walked out of the room without looking back. The door shut behind me. No echo, only the sound of wind in the hallway, and the footsteps of someone who had finally chosen their own path. 1 month after the final mediation, I left the hotel, where I had lived like an exile in my own city. I didn't go back to the old apartment, the apartment Dana had chosen because it was perfect for our image. I left it in the asset division file, no regrets. Instead, I bought a small house on the outskirts of the city. Not in a fancy neighborhood. No swimming pool. No smart home system. Just an old wooden house with a porch big enough for a rocking chair. The paint was peeling. The kitchen was old, but the foundation was solid. And for the first time, I had a chance to fix everything myself, without anyone telling me I was doing it wrong. On the first weekend, Jason stopped by. We put the cupboard doors back on, replaced the faucet, and sawed off a few rotting beams. While measuring the hinges, he asked, "Have you heard from Dana?" I wiped my hands with a frayed towel. "No, and I think there's nothing left to hear." Jason nodded. A little while later, he spoke, not looking up. "You know, if you want, you could take it all back. Just push a little further, with the evidence you have. She won't just lose the property." I smiled lightly. "I know, but that's not what I need. She's gone, and I am finally not the one left behind." A week later, I called the office and requested 2 weeks off. I hung up, closed my laptop, and started packing a small suitcase. Inside, a few clothes, an old book, and my father's watch, something I had reclaimed from Trey, as though reclaiming a part of my childhood. I drove north, to the family cabin by the lake, where, since my father passed, I had never returned, not because I was busy, but because I was too tired to face all that silence. But now, silence was the only thing I wanted. The old cabin. The wooden door creaked when I opened it. The smell of damp wood, old wool blankets, and the sound of water gently lapping against the stone. I didn't do much during my days there. Just read, cooked simple meals, went fishing, and occasionally looked at the surface of the lake, watching the ripples sway like the things that once troubled me inside. Now drifting far away. No one called. No emails. No texts from unknown numbers. Just me, alone, with a part of my life I had never had the chance to listen to. One evening, I opened the box I had brought with me. Inside, the wedding photo. I stared at it for a long time. I didn't tear it. I didn't burn it. I just placed it in the small drawer beneath the window sill. Not to keep it, but to remind myself that, sometimes, the thing that hurts the most isn't someone else. It's the fact that we've forgotten ourselves for them for too long. I returned to the city at the start of the third week. The small house was still there, unfinished, but clean. There were no white roses outside the door. No one calling from the kitchen. Just me, the one who knew every crack in my life, and had learned to patch them with time and stillness. A few friends asked me later, "Are you angry? Do you regret it? Do you wish you could go back and fix things?" I just smiled, not because I didn't have answers, but because I no longer needed to answer. I survived. I left. I no longer needed anyone's permission to be myself. And that was enough. I didn't tell this story to gain sympathy, nor to be praised for being strong. I'm telling it because I know that somewhere out there, someone is waking up in a house silent of laughter, looking at the one who once said they loved them, and no longer seeing the same gaze. I once thought forgiveness was noble, that holding on was brave, that a good man was one who could endure. But it turns out, holding on to someone who has chosen to leave isn't love, it's neglecting yourself. I lost almost everything. A house, a wife, an illusion of love that had lasted 15 years. But I didn't lose myself. And when I got it back, I realized, sometimes, what remains in the end is the very thing you need most. If you're standing at the crossroads between forgiveness and self-defense, between staying and leaving, between continuing and starting over, remember, you don't need to win. You just need not to lose yourself. Thank you for listening until the end. And if today you still feel lost in your own life, trust me, one day, you'll sit down, pour a drink, and smile for no reason. Because in the end, you've regained control of your own life.